Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Freedom Cast podcast. We're here today with Rebecca Rouse. Did I say the last name correctly?
You did.
Fantastic. I'm so glad. She is a certified personal trainer, 8 years of experience, and an athletic background in Olympic lifting and gymnastics. She is the founder of the strength training program SemperStronger, which is a community of around strength. And the 16th woman in the world to earn the Iron Maiden title through StrongFirst. Welcome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. For our audience, I mentioned the Iron Maiden title. I think I know what it is. But for our audience, what is the Iron Maiden title and how'd you get it?
The Iron Maiden is I guess more of a challenge, if you will, that StrongFirst provides for the participants at their certifications. So in order to achieve it, for women, it is with a 24 kilogram kettlebell. For men, it's with a 48. And you have to complete 1 repetition of a strict military press, a pistol squat, and a weighted pull-up. So I did that at my StrongFirst Level 1 certification in May of 2016. And at the time, there were only 15 other women that had done it prior. And now I think, gosh, I don't know, I think they're over 50 now. So wow. It's really cool to see the sport of strength grow in popularity over the years and see more women getting into lifting heavy.
Nice. I like it. I wanted to focus a little bit on your background for people on the podcast who are listening who don't know, and also specifically hone in on your support for the military through strength training. But I wanted to dive in your background first just to give people some context. So give us a little bit of your take on how you got into training and strength sports.
Sure. So I grew up a gymnast. It was kind of my first introduction to the world of strength. And I started recreationally, obviously, at age 3. And then I started competing at age 7. And I did gymnastics all the way up until high school. So right around age 14, 15. And then I stopped. So that's really where I got my foundation in terms of, physical strength, also discipline. It really is a great sport for all of those reasons.
Yeah.
And then in college, I really didn't do any strength training in high school. But then in college, I got into more of the bodybuilding world, doing muscle group splits, a lot of machines, and arm day, leg day, back day, shoulder day, chest day, kind of like most people I feel like at some point went through that phase. But fell in love with the changes that my body was experiencing and getting stronger and getting more muscular. And so that was all through college. I did 1-figure competition my junior year of college. And then after college, I became a personal trainer. So I just got my regular, CPT certification, and then I started working at Equinox as a trainer. That was my first job out of college, and I did that. And then about 1.5 years into my time at Equinox, I became a manager. So I got into more of the leadership and business side of the gym world as well. Still trained clients throughout that time as well. I worked for Equinox for 6.5 years. Mm-hmm. And during that time, I got certifications in all different types of things. Kettlebells, so that's really where I started my kettlebell training and my passion for that. I got my Olympic weightlifting certification. I learned about TRX and body weight training and just all different modalities. But I really fell in love with strength. And it was kind of around that time where I started becoming a personal trainer and helping other people reach their fitness goals that I kind of shifted my focus from aesthetics to performance. And I just fell in love with the process of getting stronger. And then in 2018, I hired a coach to help me learn Olympic weightlifting. And I got really into the Olympic lifts, and I've been training and competing in that since then. And then in 2020, when COVID hit, the gym shut down, I left the company and started my business, and that's where I am now.
Fantastic. What was it specifically about Olympic lifting that you enjoyed above all the other training modalities?
That's a great question. So I had just moved from the West Coast to the East Coast in 2018. I was still working for Equinox, but at a different location. And it was just something, I just got the itch again to compete. And I hadn't competed in anything strength-wise or fitness-wise since I was a gymnast, and that had been over a decade prior. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to do something different. And so I knew I wanted it to be strength-based, and I was kind of torn between powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting. And I guess I talked to enough people who said with my gymnastics background and my mobility and my body awareness that I would be better suited for Olympic lifting.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I got into that, and I just fell in love with it. And now I'm competing at the national level, which is beyond crazy to me, but here we are.
That's awesome. Okay, so you've won some competitions then. So what so you're competing at the national do you have a world or a national ranking or
I took eighth. Last year was my first year at nationals. I took eighth, and then that was last July. And then in January of this year, I competed for the first time at the state level. And I kind of went out of order, but I won the Texas State Championships in January for my weight class.
No kidding. Holy cow. Amazing.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd be competing in anything as an adult, let alone winning championships or anything. So I'm just enjoying the journey. I get asked all the time, like, oh, are you trying to go to the Olympics? Like, I just turned 32 last week, and I have to be realistic. Like, yeah, I would love to go to the Olympics, but I also have a business to run and people to serve, and I'm not all in on weightlifting like some of those really, really high level competitors are. And I feel like, I have my callings are more than just weightlifting. Like there's a lot more I want to do with my life. And in order to get to the Olympic level, you really have to be all in on training as a full-time job. And I'm not at a place where I want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Your time at Equinox, it sounds like you were really successful really quickly there. Anything different about the corporate gym environment or maybe things that are similar that you're bringing into training now that you really, I don't know, agreed with, disagreed with? I know Equinox is super high end, so they probably differ a little bit from your traditional commercial gym setting, but I'm curious about that environment.
In terms of training myself or training clients?
Training clients.
There's a lot of things that Equinox does well when it comes to that. I think the folk, at least when I was there, it's been 3 years now since I was there, but they were always very place a lot of emphasis on high quality service. I mean, the clients are paying top rates, compared to industry average. So they were very adamant that we deliver that highest tier, highest quality service, and client first always. We're setting up the equipment. We're 100% devoted to the client during the time of the session. We're not on our phones. We're not talking to other trainers. I went to a lot of different locations, and it unfortunately wasn't the case at every club, but I tried to set that precedent with my team as the manager. I tried to lead from the front and set that example when I was training my own clients, and I expected the same of my team. And so I think Equinox prioritizing, high level service and keeping programs up to date and just making sure that our clients' needs were met. We're checking in with them all the time. And I try to do the same, set that same precedent with my team now in my own business and how I train and lead my clients too.
Were there any aversions? I know some of the commercial gyms, I'm actually dealing with this now with trying to get, when we design gyms, a lot of these corporate entities want to really stay away from anything with free weights. They only want to deal with machines. I don't know if Equinox is the same, but are there any, do you run into any issues with, training modalities with there?
Not really. Equinox is pretty open-minded about all different types of modalities. I mean, they had kettlebells, they had TRX, they had boxes, some had maces, wow. Not a full set, but some independent, or some trainers were bringing their own maces, and the company was, or at least the management, that club was okay with that, as long as they were qualified and trained to use and coach that modality. But they had, all different types of stuff, and they were really good about providing continuing education in all different types as well. So pre and postnatal and precision nutrition, and there was so much. That was one of the things I love the most about the company, is the opportunities to continue our furthering our education, both provided by the company or we had to pay for it, but they would provide it in-house as continuing education opportunities that we could pursue. So they were pretty good about that. All the facilities had plenty of different types of equipment. They had the machines for sure, but most of the trainers that you'd see on the floor were not taking their clients on the machines. They were doing a lot of free weights, a lot of body weight stuff, a lot of good functional fitness type of training. So I didn't run into a whole lot of that.
Good. Talk to me a little bit about SemperStronger. I'm assuming that's inspiration from the Marines, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Excellent. So that's been going on for, you said 3 years now? Yeah,
2.5. We launched in September of 2020.
Okay, awesome. What made you want to start your own company? That's not exactly an easy thing to do.
It's not an easy thing. It's no days are easy, but it was really out of necessity. I mean, the Equinox shut down all their clubs during COVID, and at the time I was in California, and so California was one of the last to reopen stuff, and so it was just kind of like I could sit around and wait to get my job back, maybe, because at that point I had been furloughed, I had no income, and so I could sit around and wait and hope to hopefully have income at some point in the future, or I could go make things happen. And I'm not the type of person to sit around and wait for opportunities. I like to make my own opportunities, and I'm very goal driven type of person. So my husband and I were, with all this extra time we had, we were creating our brand and our vision for the business. And at the time I did not see past, just me having a place to train my clients online, because everything was moving online. And so at the beginning, it was really just that. It was a platform for me to train clients from anywhere from this online platform. And then it's grown into so much more over the last 2.5 years. And but at the time, really, that's how it started. And the inspiration for the name, like you said, came from Semper Fidelis, which is the motto of the Marine Corps. My husband's been in the Marine for 18 years. So the kind of the ethos of the Marines, and it runs through everything that we do as individuals, as a couple, as a team, business partners, and all of that. So it was a no-brainer to bring Semper, and then Stronger being, strength being the thread that kind of ties in everything.
Nice. Do you train a lot of military clients now?
I have some military clients. Honestly, right now, I don't train as much one-on-one as I used to, because I'm very focused on growing the business, growing the brand, networking, finding more opportunities to just grow our brand name versus just working in the business as a coach anymore. But I have trained quite a few military personnel. I also currently, in addition to the online portion of what we do, the only in-person coaching that I do right now is at a brain health clinic, actually here in Dallas, about 20 minutes away. They are treating neurologists that are treating veterans who have been injured in combat with traumatic brain injury. And so they brought me on board in December. I developed my own curriculum for them to work with the veterans on strength, mobility, motor control, stability, balance, kind of all the things that they need to rebuild their lives post traumatic brain injury. So they have a whole non-traditional neurological program that they put veterans through from all over the country. They fly them in, they go through the program for 2 weeks. And then I take the guys for 2 hours, 3 times a week while they're here, and I work with them in person. So that's another really big thing that I'm focused on in terms of working with veterans. And we also just started a nonprofit to continue to raise money to continue their care beyond the 2 weeks that they're here, and help them to provide resources and including one-on-one coaching for them, so that when they go back home, they have that accountability, that support, and that education to help them reintegrate fitness into their lives.
Excellent. I want to go a little bit deeper on this. What made you so passionate about serving the military and patriotism specifically? It's a very unpopular topic right now, to put it lightly. And I mean, your husband, huge influence, obviously, but you could have gone any number of directions with the business. So why this specifically?
A lot of reasons. For me, obviously near and dear to my heart is being married to somebody who has served this country for 18 years, and knowing so many incredible people who have done the same for, any number of years or even longer than he has. Myself, I wanted to serve. I had intentions of becoming a military officer as well, but I was unable to because of a chronic medical condition that's disqualifying for all branches of service. And I found that out in college. And so that was obviously devastating at the time, but I decided to take I ended up going down the fitness road and getting my education and my work experience in the fitness industry. And so I decided I knew eventually I wanted to combine the two, and basically take the fitness knowledge that I have and experience that I have and the passion that I have for strength, and seeing the power that has on my own life and the lives of the people that I've coached over the years, and be able to serve the people that deserve it, because they've sacrificed so much for our country. A lot of them, after their time in service, they aren't taken care of properly by the VA, and they're just left to hung out to dry with poor healthcare and very few people who actually want to help. There's most of the VA experiences, and I've heard this firsthand from the veterans that I've worked with at the brain clinic, is take this medication, and then they have another medication to combat the side effects of the first medication, and it's just this spiral out of control, and they aren't actually healing. And so over the years, as I've met more people and been exposed to more stories, it just became clear there was a very dire need for good quality care, and as the veteran suicide rate has just continued to skyrocket, and the guys, men and women, they're not getting good quality treatment, they're not healing. And I know firsthand that the power of movement, the power of feeling good in your body, and what that can do for people's physical and mental health. And so that's why we started the business. One of the reasons we started the business, and we want to help people, civilians and military. And then that's the main reason we started the nonprofit side, was so that we could raise money to help people who deserve that.
Yeah. I was talking with Jim Crafter in one of our early podcast episodes, and he was dealing with chronic pain. And he found, have you found that any of the veterans or the folks that you're dealing with, once they get into resistance and strength training, find that a lot of that starts to go away?
Yes. I mean, a lot of them have a lot of injuries, their brain being one of them that I'm
Yeah.
working with, but also physical injuries too to their bodies. And so that, they've had countless surgeries and all kinds of things to put them back together. But if they're not moving, I mean, we know movement is medicine, and if you don't use it, you lose it. And so if they're not moving that because they're in pain, and then they're in pain because they're not moving, it's just this
Mm.
vicious cycle that continues until they learn how to move again, or they're in a place where they have the resources to do that or the knowledge. And some guys, especially the special operators that I work with, they had a lot of resources while they were active duty, and a lot of coaching, and a lot of really great facilities. Some of the conventional military personnel did not have access to great coaching or great facilities. And so there's a wide spectrum of experiences of people that I've worked with. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of them are just in chronic pain constantly, and it affects their mindset. It's like,
Yeah.
all you see in the future is just a life in pain. What is that going to do to a person's psyche, right? And so when they realize that they can heal, and there are different ways to do that, and movement being a big one, they start to get their hope restored, and they start to feel better mentally and physically. And it's just a really incredible process to be a part of.
That's amazing. So is the barrier to that, getting into that and resolving the chronic pain, has it been just fear of lifting weights or going too hard in doing that? Like what do you find has been the issue, like starting out?
I wouldn't say it's fear of lifting weights so much. I mean, a lot of them have some sort of experience doing that, but I think a lot of it is like they know where they were once. They know where they were at their peak.
Ah,
And they were these like unstoppable warriors that did all this really badass stuff, and then now they're broken, more or less in some number of ways. And so it's very discouraging. It can be depressing, and so a lot of them it's like, well, I'll never be that again. So what's the point? And
mm,
it's kind of also a vicious cycle in terms of their brain, and because the guys I work with have TBI, and so their brain chemistry and their neural pathways and everything, like they're all been affected. And so going through the brain treatment that they're going through, it like rewires their brain circuitry and changes everything about their perspective, their perception. And when they start to heal their brains, they realize like, oh, there is more for me. There's hope, there's healing. And before they get there, they don't see that,
mm,
because they're so affected by what they've been through, the trauma that they've been through, the explosions that they've been through, getting shot at, and all the different things that they've experienced overseas, or in training. It really takes a toll. So
yeah, I can imagine. I had a guy that is a good friend of ours that was and I don't think he was even ever in active duty, but he did so many jumps that I think it felt like he had broken every single bone in his body, and he just continued to have a string of injuries even after his service. It wasn't even anything that he was doing. It wasn't like a car fell on him or anything like that. He just continually had spinal problems and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah,
I always
yeah,
wonder, if there's any ways to, I know with the chronic pain thing, I mean, resistance training is huge for that as far as just alleviating that period. But for people with chronic injuries in particular, it's hard to, I'm sure it's really hard to see yourself doing anything other than just like being sedentary and trying to quote unquote recover. Um, and making that mental shift has got to be just gigantic.
totally. And a lot of doctors are like, take this pill and stay off of it. And
Yeah.
we know as movement specialists that, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And so if they're not moving the joint or the muscle or whatever it is that's injured, it's going to stiffen up. You're not putting any demand on it. So why would it heal? So
Yeah.
they're just continuing to be sedentary, and it's not really actually helping anything. And they're just getting stiffer, and they're getting in more pain. And then when you try to, the longer you do that, the harder it is to get it back to where you want it to be. So I don't think that sitting and doing nothing is the answer to anything. And physically or mentally, the endorphins that they get, the adrenaline, the just the feel good experience that happens when you move your body and you break a sweat and you suffer a little bit, in a good way. I think there's a lot of value in that.
Um, Question about the VA. So has there been any resistance to, I know you're working with a lot of these guys, but is there any resistance within the VA system itself to resistance training and strength training, or any ideologies or worldviews that you're trying to overcome in getting people to start moving again? Like I know at least with general practitioners in the gen pop space, doctors are very hesitant to even recommend anybody put a barbell in their hands. And it's just like, stay off of that, bed rest, like all this stuff, but don't ever touch weights. Like, are you finding that same thing within the VA or in the military?
I can't speak for the VA. I don't work. The guys that I'm working with is actually very separate from the VA.
Oh, okay.
So the clinic that I work with has no government funding. It's all nonprofit funded. So,
Okay.
and they want to keep it that way for obvious reasons. But
Yeah.
all of the guys that come there, if not most, if not all of them that I've spoken to and worked with, have a VA horror story, if you will.
Yeah.
That's, they went to the VA for XYZ. They always saw somebody different. They didn't get any help. They never actually got any, healing, and it was just medication, or they had to hurry up and wait for 6 more months before they could get seen by anybody. And so that's the reason that they are coming to the clinic, is because they got either no help or no results from the VA. So they found alternative therapies or alternative methods to heal. And that's how they end up at this clinic that I'm working with. So I don't know specifically in terms of the VA stance on resistance training. I know the VA, I have a former client actually who works in a VA hospital, and I do know that they have gyms, they have resistance training programs, I believe, and she works with the Wounded Warriors. So I do know that in terms of occupational therapy and things that they're offering for the Wounded Warriors, I believe that there is some sort of resistance protocol involved there, but I don't know specifically for veterans, people that are just getting out, what their stance is on it.
Sure, absolutely. Just ideologically, I mentioned this earlier, but it is pretty countercultural to be patriotic and on top of all that, encouraging people to be fit instead of sedentary.
Sure.
Why do you think your message with SemperStronger resonates with people so much, especially these days?
Well, I think we're not going to be for everybody, because like you said, it's not, cool to be patriotic. It's not cool to be strong, and everyone has to be like body positivity, whatever. And, to each their own, but
Sure.
We are very firm in our stance, in that everybody benefits from being strong, and being strong in a way that is going to translate to everyday life, whether that means being able to get on the ground, play with your grandkids when you're 70, or being able to pick up water bottles at Costco without asking for help, or carrying all the groceries in one trip because you can. And so it doesn't have to be, being the most jacked and tan person in the gym and having the biggest muscles ever. It's functional strength that you can carry with you now till forever. So that's our motto, is strong for life. And that basically means strong for whatever life throws at you, whatever obstacles might come in your path, because they're coming. And also being strong for the rest of our lives. So not just today, not just tomorrow, but 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, being strong and building that foundation now, wherever you are. And it's never too late to start. And so personally, I feel like that's a message everybody could resonate with, or should, but we aren't for everybody, because there are people that don't care for that.
Yeah.
Whether for, the things that I just said, or because we are patriotic individuals, and because one of our founders has served our country for 18 years. And so if people aren't on board with that, that's okay. There's tons of other fitness companies out there, but we are very firm on who we are, who we serve, and who we are not for. And, there's room for everybody in the space. There's so many fitness businesses now, and there's more that are going to be started, in years to come. And there's room for everybody to find their people. And the people that we're for have found us, and they are very loyal to us. And the people that we're not for, there's somebody else that they are for. So
there you go. I have a bonus question for you. You do a lot of work with kettlebell training. I was informed you tell me if this is true or not. I was informed by somebody recently that kettlebell training is not as straightforward as just picking it up and swinging it. What are the challenges with kettlebell training, and what is a few things about kettlebell training people probably wouldn't know just starting out?
Yeah, so kettlebell training is definitely not just picking up and swinging it. There's a lot of technique. I think there's a steeper learning curve with kettlebells than with something like a dumbbell, which is a little bit more straightforward. And it's easier to make technical mistakes with kettlebells than with dumbbells, because of the timing, because of the placement of the load with the handle on top and then the load underneath it. So it's a unique tool. And I think probably something that people don't know is there are a couple different schools of kettlebell training. There's a hard style, which is like your StrongFirst, your RKCs. There's competition kettlebells, which is a very different type of training. And then there's kind of things in between, but those are kind of the two like big schools or big, different modalities within the kettlebell world.
Okay.
And when it comes to online kettlebell training, there's a gazillion resources. I mean, you could go into YouTube and type in kettlebell swing, and you're going to find thousands of probably different videos, different ways people do it. There's a few right ways to do it, and depending on who you ask and where they got their training from, there's also a lot of wrong ways. And so I think most people don't know. The untrained person who's never had formal coaching isn't going to recognize one from the other or know how to really tease out the noise. And there's a lot of noise on the internet. And so that's why I think kettlebells get a bad rap, is because they're self-teaching via YouTube University, and they don't know who to go to and who's credible and who's just like, I picked up a kettlebell for the first time and filmed myself and I put it on YouTube. Here's a kettlebell swing. Because like I said, there's a lot of ways to do it wrong. And so if you really want to get the most out of kettlebell training, I think the best way to do that is to hire somebody that is well-trained and a professional in that field. I've spent thousands of dollars on certifications, continuing education to be able to teach people what I know. But there's a lot of people who haven't spent $1 on it, and they just learn from, monkey see, monkey do, and then they call themselves qualified to teach. And so that's why there's a wide spectrum of quality out there. And again, to my point, I think that the best way to learn and not get injured is to hire a trained professional.
If you had a choice, and you can only choose one, dumbbells or kettlebells, are they interchangeable? I mean, could you use dumbbells if you didn't have kettlebells?
If I had to choose, I would always choose kettlebells.
Okay.
I might be biased, but I definitely think kettlebells are the way to go. There's a lot of interchangeability between the two, but they are not 100% interchangeable in the sense that there are certain things like just the experience of swinging a dumbbell versus swinging a kettlebell, because of the nature of the placement of the load and the handle with the bell underneath versus your hand in the middle with the even weight on both sides. It's a very different experience. Dumbbell snatches versus kettlebell snatches, very different experience. A lot more technical on the kettlebell side than on the dumbbell side. So, but for things like squats, lunges, carries, I think they're more or less interchangeable, still a little bit different, but those are your grind exercises versus your ballistic exercises, ballistics being swings, cleans, and snatches.
Okay.
A lot better with kettlebells than dumbbells, in my opinion.
Okay. Gotcha. Last thing I wanted to ask you, I was just looking at your certifications, just as a personal note. I think you're certified in tactical strength and conditioning training. Is that right?
Yes.
What does that mean?
So that is to my knowledge, the only official tactical strength and conditioning certification is through the NSCA. NSCA also has the CSCS. So the CSCS is kind of like your gold standard of fitness certifications, very difficult certification to obtain. And then the NSCA also provides the TSAC, which is what I have. So that is a strength and conditioning certification specifically geared around the demands of the tactical athlete. So that being your military personnel, your law enforcement personnel, your firefighters, and first responders.
Okay.
So it goes over your general strength and conditioning principles, much like the CSCS, but probably not as science intensive as the CSCS, but it focuses on the demands in terms of climate, in terms of the environment, in terms of the schedule, in terms of the danger, all the things that are very unique to the tactical populations that you wouldn't find in your general population clients.
Nice. Would you recommend somebody who's in it as a first responder or a military member to go through that training if they're ever interested in resistance training? I know that you probably wouldn't recommend it initially starting out, but at some point in their training career.
It depends if they wanted to coach others. I mean, I don't think that they would need it to be successful at their job. Obviously, every job has on-the-job training for that career field, but if they wanted to, either during or after their time in service, something that they wanted to do is coach other people that have gone through that or that have served in those roles, sure, it could add value, but it is very specifically strength and conditioning for that population. And most of those career fields have specialists who are trained to do the strength and conditioning programming or coaching so that the people that are serving can do their job. Like they don't need to do both jobs, right? There's specialists available for that. So kind of just depends what they want to do.
I was just curious because I know at least within the fire department community, the amount of training programs at the station is pretty much at zero, unfortunately, at least where we are in the Carolinas. I've heard similar things from other regions. And I just wondered from at least from their standpoint, if it would be helpful, if there's some, a need for it, if it's purely for coaching, or if it's helpful for people who are just interested in the training side. I didn't know.
If the unit doesn't have somebody that's in charge of
Yeah.
that, then sure. If somebody like wants to rise from within and take charge of the programming or the coaching for that for the whole unit, then absolutely. But it's unfortunate if it's a lack of funding or lack of resources that's why they don't have that program available. Then yeah, having somebody from within is better than having nobody.
Yeah. Okay. I might actually, that might be a good certification to recommend for some of the guys that are trying to head up that training. It usually starts with the chief and works its way down, but I'm always
Yeah.
curious about that. Cool. Rebecca, if people wanted to find out more about you, not only your content, but also your training programs and SemperStronger, where can they go?
So our website is SemperStronger.com. We are on Instagram at SemperStronger, and our nonprofit is SemperStrongerFoundation.org. And then my personal Instagram is at Rebecca.Rouse.
Excellent. Rebecca, thank you so much for this interview. I really appreciate your time.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.